Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly webinar on administering financial aid in the time of COVID-19. It's been several weeks that we've been meeting each Wednesday at noon, and we always wonder, if there's going to be enough information to fill the hour, or if we have enough to discuss. So it's been that case pretty much. We have some good information to share with you today. It will be myself and Erica as usual. We have a great screen show that Erica put together for everyone. We're just going to spend probably just a few minutes going over the screens. I want to make sure that there is plenty of time for questions. Since we were really able to get through all of the questions during last week's webinar, we didn't send out an updated Q&A as it really wasn't necessary. And we continue to receive your individual questions and concerns, and we answer those as best we can. There hasn't really been, I would say this week, well, I should say since last week when we met for the webinar, the questions have been consistent and in line with what we're going to be discussing today. So I think that you'll find this information to be very helpful. And I wanted to start excuse me, by going, oops, I messed up, wait a minute, there we go. I wanted to start by providing some updated information about the HERE funds. Under the CARES Act, of course, we've talked at great length on these webinars, and we've provided guidance regarding the funds and how they can be used. And last week, there was a lot of discussion about whether or not those funds could be awarded to graduating students for spring 2020. So those of you who had that question outstanding, we received clarification or guidance, I guess I could say, really support from SUNY Council, and they want us to let you know that you may award those funds to students who are graduating, or frankly, in some cases, those students may have already received their diploma for this semester. So we want to make that clear up front. That was a big discussion, and I know it's a discussion that is not unique to SUNY. There's been a lot of information that's been floated around from the Department of Ed, and also clarifications through NASFA and other associations. This seemed to be a question that was really just sort of hanging out in the air, so we were happy to get clarification or a determination this morning regarding that. So we felt pretty strongly, and I know most of you did as well, because I've spoken to you or we've been emailing regarding this same topic. So you're encouraged to do that. I mean, frankly, I think if you really think of it, these are some of your students who were very impacted by COVID-19 this semester. So that is up to, that's good news for, I think, for all of us, and that was on everybody's minds, especially, again, given the day. I mean, it's May 20th. We are right there. You've got students who have either walked, I can't say they walked across the stage because that didn't really happen this year, but those students who are graduating in whatever format they did so, you can award them the funds. So speaking of the funds, this was also a big discussion on the listserv this week, and certainly we've spoken to so many of you who are concerned about the approval process for your campus plan. So I want to share a couple things with you. One is, I've been saying, and I've said it in meetings and on our webinars, emails, etc., that SUNY has to approve these plans, and that is absolutely true. However, we cannot give a final approval of those campus plans until we have received approval for our plan by the Division of the Budget. So just so that you guys know, this isn't something that we are holding up for, we're not just giving you a hard time, quite the opposite. As you guys know, the auditors from our audit division under Amy's direction have just done a spectacular job with helping campuses to really focus on the use of the funds for their student population. I can assure you that they have worked long hours to really get those plans to be as comprehensive as they can be with regard to the methodology, how you're using the funds, that you're laying in your documentation exactly who these funds will be used for and why. Very important. It's very important for our reporting that's required not only to SUNY, but also to the Department of Ed. And what we do know, and I can say this with confidence, is that this was developed, this process of a campus plan was developed really to help you to be accountable for that money. And obviously we're all good stewards of public dollars. Financial aid people especially know how to approach that. This was really just an effort to make sure that you guys are all in compliance, that you have documentation that you need. And to that end, the auditors have created also the tool for the checklist. They've also put together some other guidance that's going to be shared with you at a later date. I don't have it today, but we'll be getting some guidance out to you that will really help you as you move into the next phase, which is awarding the funds and actually dispersing it to students. And then beyond that, when you have to report. So even though I think sometimes it seems like a pain to put together such a you know, complex plan and it has so much depth to it, in reality, it's very necessary. And I know that you guys have been doing a terrific job on that. The campuses, your campus committees, the financial aid folks, and the other members of your campus committees have done a terrific job. And it's not been an easy thing to do. We know that, we recognize that. You're all working remotely and you're trying to do team meetings and have discussions in a way that it's challenging. You know, we've all had to kind of shift our focus quite a bit. And while you're trying to do this remotely, you also have to make sure that you're following these rules, et cetera. So I know it hasn't been an easy process. We appreciate your participation in that and the cooperation between campuses, and your work with the auditors from SUNY is terrific. It's much appreciated. And I think ultimately in the long run, it will help you to be able to explain to the students who are no doubt calling you and asking about the funds, and anybody who's looking to see how you use those. So having said that, what we have right now is anticipation that we will have approval from the DOB maybe by the end of this week, which would mean we would be able to then approve officially your process and your plan for your campus. It's been a considerable amount of work to get the plan over to the Division of the Budget and have it be approved by them. I did hear this morning that the City University of New York has just had their plan approved. And so we anticipate that we'll be able to share with you very soon that the plan, our overall SUNY plan has been approved. And then we can begin the process of notification of your individual plans. There shouldn't be any surprises. I know that many of you have been working with Amy and Kim, and that you have, you know, a very good open dialogue about what perhaps you need to change or enhance in your report or any modifications. So continue to work with them. And I know a couple of you have reached out to me as well, or to Erica. That's fine. Feel free to do that. And we'll keep you posted as soon as we hear anything. I do know that everyone is anxious to begin getting funds out. We've heard from many of you. You know, we know that you're eager to do that, and we certainly respect that. Also, during last week's webinar, we just discussed really the drawdown process for the funding. So in the same vein of we want to know when our plan is going to be approved, we also have a lot of questions about the drawdown process, mostly from the state operated campuses, because of the differences between the drawdown and use of funds from a community college versus that of a state operated campus. So Erica has been more involved in this than I have. She's worked with Peter Roofer from our controller's office and Patty Baltzel, I think I probably said her name wrong, from the Student Loan Service Center. And I think most of our state operated campuses are familiar with Peter and Patty, who work in the more of the G5 environment, so the funding piece. So what we did here is just put together just some general guidelines for you and a little bit of information about the process that we've been able to gather. And I think that having it in the screen show is very helpful because then you'll be able to refer back to it. Basically, there certainly is more detail that would be, coming through, again, through our controller, division of the budget, OSC, they're looking at the accounting piece, but just some of these do apply to everybody. Y'all had to register and apply for the CARES Act funds using the grants.gov and your school's done number. But we also have, we do know that there was an initial tracking email that acknowledged this. From that point, you probably will not be getting much direction past that. Once you receive an email notifying you that the award is established, you're going to see some instructions on what you need to do. And this is really for our G5 campuses. So you need to be patient. Getting this email as a result of your, that second email that you would be getting as a result, which notifies you of your award, doesn't mean that the money is immediately available. And so our folks in the controller's office would say you do need to work through them, be patient, and the instructions are all listed here. So we want to make sure that you are aware, and this is the procedure that you'll be following. So this is available to you, and it sort of goes through all of that. And then just as far as drawing down, there's a couple things that we reached out to the controller's office about. One is the year-end shutdown of the SUNY-wide accounting, which you will get notified well in advance of that. It's usually not a big issue because it ends up to be maybe 4 to 5 days. But again, you'll know that. And again, for those campuses who are state-operated campuses, if you're uncertain about how this works, there's likely to be somebody else on your campus that works pretty directly with this. And so that is one thing that we know. I also want to mention that in addition to the portions of the portions of the CARES Act that we've already talked about, the student aid piece, there is also some additional funding for the historically Black colleges and university and tribal controlled colleges and university, as well as the minority serving institutions. So there are some other campuses. I believe I might have heard we had like 39 campuses potentially who could also be receiving other types of funding. You just need to be aware of that. But if you need more information about your allocations, or you have questions about any of those funds under that relief fund, you can take a look at what is available on the Department of Ed's website. So Erica's really been good about putting all the links in this so that you can go back and take a look. This is a good reference tool, I would say. Again, I don't want to read it to you. I'm not going to insult your intelligence, but these are some good points for you guys to remember. Okay, Erica, I'm just going to ask you anytime if you want to jump in. Is there anything that you want to add, or do you feel like?
No, I think that this really covers everything. I just wanted to point out again that there was a question that came out of last week about that year-end shutdown, and Pete Rupert really said that there really was not going to be an issue because the shutdown that affects the drawdown would really be only for 4 to 5 days, but that you can estimate in advance what you need if you want to. But historically, that was never something that had been used by campuses. But that is an option if you need it.
Got it. That's a good point. Thank you. And I think that might be my update for the first 3 screens. And we're going to move into the next area, which is the updated guidance from the Department of Education. So again, I think these PowerPoint presentations are really great resource tools. So again, I'm not going to go through and read every single screen, but what I will say is that what Erica's does every week is try to really capture the most important pieces and let you know what's in the documents. I know that everybody is pretty much on the IFAP electronic announcement listserv. You're getting those distributions, and that's terrific. But if you don't have time to go through them all with a fine-tooth comb, then I think these screen shows are good to kind of highlight. I think it's fair to say there weren't any real big surprises in the updated guidance that we just received from the department. I believe it was, 2 days ago or today. But it does provide some additional flexibilities, and it really updates the information that was previously released in the guidance that was from March 5th and April 3rd. So it's really just building on that, and it also adds the information about the CARES Act. So of course, there were some pieces that apply directly to our campuses. One is regarding distance learning. The department has expanded the broad approval for the use of distance education. So we have payment periods that overlap or begin on March 5th through December 31st, 2020. So I think what you're going to see there is just, these are obviously extensions of information that you've already had. Same as far as the accreditation. So just keeping in mind, and Erica, just jump in if there's anything that you want to add, because I'm going to kind of move through these pretty quickly. So I'll just do the quick overview. And whoops, I want to go back to that and just make sure that everybody saw that, the accreditation piece, which relates to distance learning, has actually also been extended, I guess you could say, until December 31st of this year. And verification of high school or equivalent completion status. This is important, obviously. So the updated guidance applies to December 31st. So you've got 2 academic years in there, of course, 1920 and 2021. Groups V4 or V5, you can actually, oops, sorry, just take that off. You can use documentation of an applicant's high school completion status that they may have already obtained for other purposes. So for example, admissions. And if you're unable to obtain documentation, you may accept a signed and dated statement from the applicant, and they're attesting to their high school completion or the equivalent. So Erica, was this new or did this just expand? This was expansion, right?
Expanded.
Okay, thank you. So also it tells you what you must indicate. I'm hoping that this is helpful to campuses, because I think this might have been one that came up previously, or that might have been on a different call I was on, but okay. All right. So this is a link to the tax treatment of student refunds. Everybody knows that that's not counted as income, but if you want to look at the specifics, there's some frequently asked questions that actually address that. I'm not sure how much this group is really needs to know that or see that, but I just wanted to point that out to you. So as far as the campus-based programs, so the CARES Act, which I think we probably talked about this before, waives the institutional match associated with federal work study and SEOG for 2019-20 and academic year 2020-21, which is hard to say. But you also, the guidance here, you may reimburse yourself from the federal work study for the non-federal portion of wages that are paid to students on or after March 13th rather. And you can also reimburse yourself from federal work study allocation for the non-federal portion of SEOG awards contributed through the fund-specific match. So again, this would be for all disbursements made on or after that March 13th date. That's the date. And then you can actually transfer unused or unexpended federal allocations of work study to federal SEOG. And this continues a little bit more about that and about the use of the grants, the eligibility criteria. And you guys don't need me to read through that, but if you do have more questions about those pieces, we can certainly take those questions. And let's see, this is good too, the leaves of absence. This is important because we certainly wanted to make sure that students can kind of pick up where they left off without being too restrictive. So obviously, if you have a student who is returning from an approved leave of absence, basically, you don't have to worry that you're at the exact same point. It's really important for students to have flexibility, because if they were unable to attend because of COVID-19, you don't have to be as restrictive with regard to that, where they return. And again, these are things that may not impact a lot of students, but they could based on the current situation, okay? So then we also have information about tuition and fees component of the cost of attendance. So if a student, for any term, subsequent term or award year, the cost for the coursework that he or she, I'm sorry, I just got distracted, apologies. Okay, so the tuition and fees component of the cost of attendance is, it doesn't have to include the tuition cost for the coursework that he was taking at the time of the leave of absence. So you're working with, and I know that these are all different scenarios that you work with, and certainly you want to make sure that you're including any living expenses that are appropriate. And again, this isn't something that's necessarily impacting all of your students, but it's important in the clarification on all this. The information from the department is important. There is more information about the leaves of absence. Again, this is important because you can adopt a temporary policy, and it must require that all requests are submitted in writing and include a reason for the request. But this is the kind of flexibility that the department is putting in to allow you to work within these parameters for students, okay? Normally, you wouldn't be doing that. You would know, usually, I guess, in most of these situations, you would know ahead of time, okay? But this is giving you flexibility to have the student move a little freely back into complete. Okay, so the returning of Title IV funds, the CARES Act waives the requirement to return Title IV funds as a result of any withdrawals that were related to a qualifying emergency. And there's no requirement to return Title IV funds for students who began attendance in a payment period or period of enrollment that begins on or includes the March 13th date in 2020. And then if you subsequently withdraw from that period due to COVID-related circumstances. Again, going for the flexibility. And I think you guys can read, you would be able to read some of the small print here, but this just clarifies exactly the requirements with regard to the returns and what doesn't have to be returned. Okay. All right. And
I just wanted to add that, we are going to be sending this screen show out as we usually do to the financial aid directors listserv. So, you can share that with your colleagues. I know there are other people on the phone from various offices. I don't have access to those listservs. So we do send this out to the financial aid directors listserv, and hopefully you can reach out to your colleagues, or it's possible that other listservs who have access to this information will send it out on theirs. I'm not really sure. We don't really have control over that.
Yeah, usually I think Josh has been sending it to the bursars listserv, but some of these issues are definitely, so I'm glad you brought that up, Erica, because Again.
Yeah, I don't think he's consistently sent it out every week, but,
Okay.
you know, we can kind of prompt him for that.
And I think these are good resources too, because again, it's chronological, you know, and this is the most current information that we have from the Department of Ed. So, okay. So I guess just moving along, I mean, this is all of the requirements that are now clarified for us regarding return of Title IV funds. And we can definitely, you know, go discuss this more, but I think that some of these reporting requirements you guys are pretty familiar with. You just want to make sure that you have this as a resource tool, as Erica said, because they're, you know, these are things that, you know, you guys all need to pay attention to as far as the return of Title IV and the impact that CARES has on that. Again, make sure you're retaining information about anything that you're doing here, any, you know, the reporting requirements, and the documentation is very important there. Okay, so yeah, okay, wait, so let's talk, let me go back. We could talk about the reporting requirements, because I finished up return of Title IV, and now we're going to talk about the reporting requirements. So as far as what you need to do here, this is going to follow right along. CARES Act requires that you report specific information for each student who is not required to return the Title IV, but you do need to be able to talk about what happened with that student. Okay, so again, you have to identify the student. You have to talk about the payment period and the dates. So you're not just, again, you're documenting it, the amount of the Title IV that the student received for the period that they withdrew, and the total amount that you have not returned to Ed as a result of any of these provisions. So again, just the accountability is here. I think most people, this isn't something that we generally get a lot of questions about, like, how do I do this? But the reporting is specific to this, so I want to just go over that. As far as the next reporting requirement, the student must have a total of, they have to have a total amount that would have been returned had they been required to do so. So I think what you're looking at there is, you don't have to, but you still have to know who was impacted. So you don't have to return funds, but you have to know for whom you did not return funds, okay, and how much, and etc. And then the Department of Education has the list of what they will do. So upon the receipt of the information from the institution indicating that your student has withdrawn, they will take the necessary steps, okay? So they're going to cancel the entire amount of any disbursement of a direct loan that the student borrowed for that payment period, or his parent, his or her parent. Exclude any of the subsidized usage and Pell Grant lifetime eligibility that was used for that payment period that the student does not complete due to this qualifying emergency. So, and they will cancel disbursements of teach grants received by a student covered for the payment period or the enrollment period from which the student withdrew. So they're restoring their eligibility for that as well. All good news. Okay, let's see. Erica, just jump in at any of these if you think I need to. I mean, I don't know that we need to do too much more detail on any of that. Are you good on the reporting requirements?
Yeah, I'm good.
So, qualifying for return of Title IV relief. This is also spelled out in the new guidance. Campuses that move from the ground-based instruction to your distance learning, which is basically everybody. If you closed your housing, campus facilities, experienced interruptions, what you can do is you can consider all of your withdrawals to be covered or during that period to have been as a result of COVID-19. So if you didn't undergo any changes, then that's a different story. But I actually don't, I think everybody falls into that category. So that
Yeah,
you
this
must.
is why I added this. I
Yeah.
added this just in a smaller font because it was included, but it didn't really relate to our campuses.
Right. So that's what we're generally thinking. So again, like what Erica did was she pulled all the pieces that we think apply to you, but just to mention it, you know, I don't think it applies to anybody else. But what you do need to do is you really do have to find out from the student or obtain their attestment, I guess you could say, that they withdrew because of COVID-19. So, and there's flexibility within that too. It could be the illness of a student or family member, or they're taking care of people. There's a loss of childcare. They can't get Wi-Fi. I mean, there's a lot of reasons in there. And one of the things that I think in just, again, documentation, you know, you want to make sure that, but this was a question that a lot of people were saying, you know, most of the withdrawals were because of that. That's probably a good assumption. So the department agrees on that. Okay, and let's see, satisfactory academic progress. This is another thing that's good news. The CARES Act allows you to exclude the attempted credits that the student was unable to complete due to COVID-19. So they're not required to do a SAP appeal. You can, you can exercise flexibility here. And if one of the things, again, documentation, you want to make sure that you can, support your action on this, and that there was a reason that was related to COVID-19. Again, similar reasons are listed as examples. They're not the only ones. You might see some other things that come up or pop up that, that you could see as a situation that might be valid. I mean, these are really good examples, and they're probably the most frequently used, I would think. Okay, is there anything else on SAP? Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is just another piece. There will be an impact on the maximum time frame here. So the SAP requirements require that the pace at which the student progresses ensures completion of the program within the maximum time frame. So what you're doing here is, again, if a student is unable to complete due to COVID, you're going to just exclude.
Yeah. I just wanted to add something in here. There was a lot of information included in this piece of it in the electronic announcement that you may want to take a look at. It was really too much information, and it talked about the different percentages and how you're going to recalculate the percentage. So you might want to take a look at the electronic announcement for more information on this piece.
And also, that is also something that I mean, we don't get tons of questions. I think you guys know generally how to do that, but we want to just point you to the resources on that. Oh, Eric, you might want to talk about PassFail. Do you want to take that one?
Sure. This is actually not included in the main body of the electronic announcement. It was in the Q&As that were attached to the electronic announcement. So I just thought, because this is a topic that people ask about fairly often, that this would be something that we could include in the PowerPoint presentation, and then I included the link to the Q&As as well. People have been asking, how to handle this, and I think this gave some pretty good instruction about allowing campuses to allow students to take all or some of their their courses on a pass-fail basis. And then, you could either, provide the option for all or some, and the campus really had the discretion to determine if all the coursework in the term would be evaluated on pass-fail or by grading. And of course, as we've said in the past, you really want to make sure that you're counseling students who really may need a GPA for other purposes. Some of them need a certain GPA for scholarships. Some of them are trying to increase their GPA if they're going on to grad school or trying to get into a certain program. So, you know, they should be, you know, counseled in some way to make sure that they're not just taking all courses pass-fail if it's going to affect something like a scholarship or their ability to go on after leaving their undergraduate work. And of course, you can, you know, temporarily modify your policies, which, you know, I think they're really trying to be flexible with you. So if you don't have a policy, you can develop a temporary policy. And the pass-fail credits do count as attempts for SAP purposes. Typically, what I've advised people in the past is if you are not using a GPA, the way that I used to say it when I worked for HESC was, you know, you might want to assign a GPA value to the P for the GPA purposes. And typically in the past, and I know that this isn't the case at all campuses, you know, I would advise a 2.0 or higher, just because once you get to that fifth payment for TAP purposes, and of course, remember I used to work for a state agency, that 2.0 was really important for state aid. So if you are trying to factor in a GPA, you might want to assign a grade to the pass. I know some of you are, you know, with these, you know, you still might want to assign, you know, a 1.0 to that or something, but, you know, that's really whatever your policy is. And the provost had sent some guidance out very early on about the options that you should be you know, allowing for your students. And of course, again, counseling, I believe, was part of that.
So also, Erica, was there was guidance that came out from the provost, from SUNY provost on pass-fail to the academic folks. So I think that all comes into play, and as Erica mentioned, state programs as well. So it's kind of a broader issue, I guess you could say. Okay, so those were all of the screens. And we did leave a lot of time for discussion. I think we've got a good amount of time if people have questions. I'm thinking there might be questions about the plans. If anybody has anything else they wanted to ask or talk about there, feel free, or anything else really.
Okay, well, I'll just start going through the questions then.
Perfect.
So early on, somebody asked if we're going to be discussing the utilization of the CARES Act 2 and CARES Act 3, and I had actually answered within the chat that we were not going to be discussing
not
the
today
institutional portion or the minority serving institution portion
right
today.
Yeah, we're not there yet. And you know what, I don't know to what extent. I mean, obviously we just need to get through the student part first before we can even really get into what the next steps are. So I think we'll probably be doing that at some point, I would assume, along with others, likely.
Okay, this one person says, I have a question about our acknowledgement from the CARES plan. We created a PDF form that we plan to email to the student for self-attesting. The form requires a checkoff box of yes or no to indicate if the student incurred expenses and a signature section. After speaking with our IT department, there is a possibility we can get this done through a survey or electronic form on our portal. The student will select the yes or no box and submit. My question is this acceptable to receive the information into a database and use the portal log in as a confirming signature? We have to update the CARES plan with SUNY if we can implement this electronically. Yes, you can implement this electronically. There's no restriction for that. And no, we don't anticipate that you will need to update your plan.
Yeah, but no, I guess not. If Amy and those guys were okay with it, there must not be any need for that. You know, like if they were questioned about it or something, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Next one. This is great, but will we need to recalculate? Oh, this is probably because we indicated that SUNY Council has has determined that students graduating can be awarded. So this person is saying, this is great, but we will need to recalculate our numbers. Will that slow down approval of our plan?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I mean, if you wanted, if there's anything, we could obviously take any changes or modifications because nothing has been finalized yet. If it changes your plan. Oh, go ahead.
If you're also putting this information out on your website, you know, because you have to, you know, put your required reporting on the website, you know, we understand that is, some of those things are going to have to be modified as you work through this process. But I guess we can probably find out. I can't imagine this would slow down the approval of your plan.
No, it shouldn't. I mean, really, I think, and in fact, unless it's like a major change in your methodology or something, that's what we're looking at right now, is if there's anybody that has that. But other than that.
Okay, the next question. Are the lawsuits in California and Washington in any way related to the delay in the approval of our plans? If those lawsuits are upheld, it may change the CARES award amounts at many colleges since the math that was used to calculate them may change.
I can't really speak to those lawsuits, and I know that SUNY Council is you know, aware of everything that is going on as far as that in the across the country as far as lawsuits, but it's not something that we're not holding anything. So if that's your question, is like, are we holding anything until that comes through? That's not anything that I've been told at all. And it's really just what we said at the top of this meeting with regard to the process for the review and approval, et cetera. And certainly, if anything changes, we will notify you immediately, but I have no information that will occur at this point.
Okay, this campus is asking, can we have students apply or certify and just wait to disperse until approval? So this is in relation to the plans being approved.
Yeah, the problem with that is if anything changes in the approval process, like, I mean, we can't really be doing too much ahead of time. I think, I mean, it certainly depends on the situation, but unfortunately, we don't want anybody to make anything too major as far as a move until we get the approval from DOB and that we're told, you know, that our plan and then therefore individual campus plans are able to be moving forward. So I would caution against too many moves on that. Do you agree, Erica?
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I wish we could say different.
I know, me too. I do, really.
You know. Okay, this is a similar question. We are a community college. Our CARES plan has been approved by SUNY. We opened the application to students with a priority application deadline of May 27th. We control our G5, unlike state ops. Once we approve student CARES applications, can we draw down the money, or do we need to wait for SUNY approval to draw down?
So nobody's plans have been approved yet officially. So I think I know there was like one campus who had a time sensitive issue, and maybe that's just the person who's writing, but you shouldn't be doing anything until you get the approval from SUNY.
Which basically means that you should not be drawing down your funds to award students just yet.
Yeah.
Because we need that division of budget approval.
I mean, it could, you know, and I don't anticipate it changing. I mean, that's what we're all working so hard for at System. I mean, the auditors and, you know, our chief financial officer and Eric and I are obviously all working on this with SUNY Council as well, but we just don't want any missteps at this point. We have to make sure that everybody approves before we move forward.
Okay, this person is asking what is the repercussion if we already had drawn down all of our funds? At the time of our drawdown, there was no guidance regarding not to. I can understand that probably happened because the Department of Ed did not advise initially not to draw down all the funds. I think really what I think the issue was with this is that if you weren't going to utilize all the funds, and you had all this money sitting in your account, you know, they really haven't provided any guidance on how you would return that money or how you would transfer that money to a college that was more needy. I don't think that there was any official guidance that stated that there were going to be any repercussions for doing that anyway. I think it was just, you know, best practices mostly, on how you should be handling the funds.
Agreed. I mean, I wouldn't.
Would you agree with that, Patty?
Yes, I would. And so I wouldn't panic, you know, I mean, I don't want anybody to be nervous about that. I would just say, moving forward, let's just all wait until we get the approval. And if everybody can stay calm, that's probably the best approach. I know it isn't easy. And I know that there's a lot of outside pressure coming from all over the place. I mean, we're all aware of that, but it just kind of hold now, and we hopefully will know very soon.
Okay, the next question says, are students who are enrolled in all online courses prior to March 13 still not eligible for CARES funds? There has not been any change in the guidance regarding exclusively online courses, and this is really about the construction of those courses. So, you know, there has been no update in any of the guidance from the department regarding students who are enrolled exclusively in online courses. The next question says, does this apply to unofficial withdrawals as well? This is regarding the R2T4 probably.
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I mean, well, the guidance did say that you can basically assume that all students who withdrew were due to COVID-19. That was in the electronic announcement.
Correct.
So do with that what you will.
Yes.
Okay. Another similar question. If the student is an unofficial withdrawal and taken to the period midpoint, which is after March 13th, as they have no LDA, do we have to return the funds, or do they qualify not to have the funds returned? I think these questions probably came out before we hit that screen.
Okay.
Where we talked about the new guidance.
Okay.
Somebody is asking, do you know how we are to report the R2T4 on loans to COD? That is not my expertise.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know that. I don't know that.
Let's see. Got more questions in here about withdrawals, but again, I think they were right before that screen that advised that you can assume that all withdrawals are due to COVID-19. Here's a question on SAP. For SAP, we can exclude from attempted credits, but not from GPA, correct? That means it would not help most of our students. Unfortunately, yes, you are correct that it only talks about excluding the attempted credits, and the GPA was not something that they indicated you could exclude from the assessment for good academic standing. Oh, somebody is giving some advice about the NAFTA Ask Regs case, KA34846. If you guys want to look into the chat, it's about unofficial withdrawals. Somebody's also saying schools can run SAP through and still have them appeal as well if COVID related, correct? Yes, I believe so.
Yes.
I don't think that would be an issue. A question asking, do we have any guidance on Excelsior with regard to credits earned? Is all this forgiveness only for students who do a total withdrawal? We don't have any updated information on Excelsior or any New York State award programs at this point. You know, we have heard that HESC is planning on doing a webinar, but we have not received any information on when that will be. I know that Lisa Simpson was collecting questions, and she said to continue to send questions in as you come up with them. and she's trying to expand on their Q&As that are available on their website. So unfortunately, we really don't have any more information on state programs. The next question, for state SAP, it is required that we collect documentation that a student was impacted due to COVID if we can see that after 3/13 they did not complete all credits. Could we just consider them impacted? New York State has not stated that you could just consider all students who withdrew impacted. Again, we're going to have to wait for additional guidance. It's possible they may modify this, but their Q&As online don't indicate that you can consider everyone impacted. Somebody's saying that the link in the slide doesn't work. Oh, it's the Q&A. I think it's the Q&A from the electronic announcement. So for anybody, if that link isn't working, I don't know why it's not working. But if you go to the electronic announcement and go to the bottom of the electronic announcement, there's a link from that electronic announcement to the Q&A.
We could probably send that out with the screen show, couldn't we?
Well, the electronic announcement is just, I mean, it's right at the bottom of the link is right in the screen show. It's
Got
just,
it.
I guess, the Q&A.
Oh, I see. You mean the Q&A. Okay, sorry. Misunderstood.
Right.
Got it.
Right. So this question, it says Excelsior, earned 12 fall, enrolled in 12 spring, but earned 9. Student enrolled in 6 summer, are they considered otherwise on track, even though they did not earn the required 30? Again, these are questions for HESC. They have not provided any updated guidance, so I just don't think it's really good for us to comment on any of these right now.
And you know what we can do? We'll follow up with HESC. They did tell us, like Erica said, that they were going to be doing a webinar and providing more information, but we'll continue our efforts to nudge them to get them to push on that. Maybe if we told them they could jump on our webinar, Erica, we'll see what we can do.
Okay. Next question. Can we put our information and application for CARES Act funds on our website prior to our plan being approved?
I think you should wait. I would feel more comfortable just waiting. I mean, I know you're probably thinking that that's, what's the big deal? But I mean, until we're completely approved in our approach, I think we should hold off on moving forward on that. I just don't want anybody to get clipped on that later.
Okay.
Because it should be coming, it should be soon, you guys, and I know everybody's very eager, but.
Okay, somebody's saying the last bullet on the SAP slide of new guidance is that justification enough for global application of exclusion of grades from SAP Calc? Do we need individual student documentation?
Let me see. Let's take a look. I'm going there. I want to see how it's written. The last bullet?
I don't know if they're talking about the PassFail. I think they're talking about the one above that, the screen above that. Go down to the next screen. One more. I think this is effective excluding attempted credit. So the last bullet on the SAP slide of new guidance is that justification enough for global application of exclusion of grades from SAP Calc.
I mean, global? I don't know. I mean, are you talking about, I guess that's, I'm not totally sure what the question is. I'm not
sure exactly what it is.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to, that's the word global. That makes me a little nervous, maybe.
Right. I don't think you want to apply this across the board to all,
No.
excuse me, all students. Because I think you do need to know whether or not, I mean, we're not talking about R2T4 here, where they indicated that you can assume that withdrawals are due to COVID-19. This is, SAP. So Yeah, I feel the same way you do, Patty. I don't think that a global application
Yeah.
is advisable. We had another question about what happens if the school did drag down the money already.
You know, we're not hearing that, I mean, my feeling on it is because there was confusion, I don't think I would be very concerned with that. I just think moving forward, let's get the approvals before we do anything else.
Okay, this person, if we will need to support our actions with respect to excluding courses for the quantitative SAP measurement for federal aid, but we can also assume that all withdrawals after a particular date are due to COVID-19, should students be required to self-report having been affected by COVID-19, or can we apply the exclusion across the board without requiring, sorry, it's a long question, without requiring anything from the student?
Well, I think in the reporting,
I assume they're talking here about, I mean, I always feel like it's really a good idea for you to, you know, have documentation.
Yeah.
You know, I can't say that enough, that, you know, if there's any way for you to get the documentation in hand, you know, even if it's a student attesting to that in some way.
Well, yeah, because
I think that you don't want to just globally assume for SAP purposes that all students have been affected.
And for reporting purposes, you do have to be able to show it. So I don't think that's a stretch to say that you should know or be able to report, you know, how the student was impacted, or to attest that you know that they were. I mean, I know that we're making some assumptions here, but I also wouldn't, I think if you're looking at it, I'm not an auditor, but if you're looking at it from an audit standpoint, you want to make sure that that you have a trail, and it's not just that you're, you know, rubber stamping everybody. There has to be some sort of.
Patty, we only have 1 minute left.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We have one more question that we can answer. We are expected to report within 30 days. The 30 days for us is May 26th. Are you saying we should not post our disclosure that was covered in last week's webinar? No, we're not saying that.
Right, we're not saying that. So, okay, so just to kind of wrap up again, and because it's a good place to kind of wrap up about the campus plan. No, the reporting that's required on your website by the Department of Ed, you should move forward with that. Obviously, there's some specifics that you won't have, but as far as how long until campus plans are approved, we hope that that's going to happen soon. We're going to let you know ASAP as soon as we receive the approval that we need to be able to push out approvals to the campuses. So if anything else comes up that would indicate that there's going to be any kind of delay from, like, you know, this week, we will let you know as soon as possible. Okay, but as far as meet your federal requirements and hang on, we're going to get those approvals out to you as soon as we get approved from the top. Okay. All right, so I guess that's probably it for today. If there's any other questions that come up, feel free to send them over to me or to Erica, and we look forward to probably jumping on a call next week. If there's any updates prior to then, you know, we'll be in touch, but otherwise, thank you again for all of your hard work on the campus plans. Hang in there and stay safe. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.